This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this chilly Wednesday morning, at least chilly up here in upstate New York if you're watching the show via the internet or on the replay via the YouTube channel. And I should keep reminding people, if for some reason you miss a show, you can always check it out on the Capital OTB YouTube channel where the Racing Across America programs and the morning programming in general is archived over on the Capital OTB YouTube channel, which if you go to capitalotb.com, there's a link to the YouTube channel on the page. Keep forgetting to remind people about that. I've been doing that for maybe the past couple of months or so. So there you go, capitalotb.com. All the info for what's going on here in the morning programming as well you can find there. But again, morning programming linked on capitalotb.com via the YouTube channel. I should also remind people, we just saw the Capital OTB page there. It reminded me you can go there and find all the events too. I do want to remind you that every Monday in January and February there is a knockout challenge down here at the Clubhouse Racebook. So keep that in mind. $100 contest every Monday in January and February, tied into obviously Aqueduct, which is running on Mondays now. So come on down to the Clubhouse Racebook. Also want to remind you that down here at the Clubhouse Racebook, Friday, our friend Brian Nadeau will be in with a happy hour bankroll this Friday, January 24th, at the Clubhouse Racebook. You can come in between 11 and 2 o'clock and enter for the drawing that will select 25 patrons at random to participate in that $500 bankroll. Brian was in here, I think, probably about a month ago, this coming Friday, and just about doubled his bankroll. So everybody wound up with a nice little punch to their account here as they participated in the $500 happy hour bankroll the last time Brian was in. So again, pop down here to the Clubhouse Racebook this Friday to participate in the happy hour bankroll. And Sunday, January 26th, there is going to be a Sunday syndicate that you can participate in. Everybody pools their money together, and we'll see what we can come up with there. So the first 100 patrons can participate in that with an entry fee of $25. And again, you can find out more about all of this on capitalotb.com. And one more reminder, coming up next week, if you've been a fan of the boxing programs down here at the Clubhouse Racebook that have been held each month for probably the past 3 or 4 months now, gotten a great response, amateur boxing. It's been a fun night down here. January's event was scheduled for this past Monday, but you haven't missed it because it was moved. It's coming up now this next Tuesday, January 28th. That will be the January edition of the boxing down here at the Clubhouse Racebook. Again, 711 Central Avenue in Albany. Come on down. Coming up on Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning, our weekly visit from Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, countdowntothecrown.com, and this is the time of year we absolutely like to have Jeremy plugged in, get some of his thoughts on the Triple Crown, which he concentrates on so closely with his Countdown to the Crown project. And we have 5 races from this past holiday weekend with the 3-year-olds that we will take a look at. We'll get some comments from him on at least a couple others. It was a nice weekend for the 3-year-olds. Coming up a little later on in the program, Jim Mulvihill from the NTRA. He'll give us a little preview of this weekend's National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas, maybe some of the names to pay attention to as we watch over the days the leaderboard, and talk a little bit about the format and whatnot. And as Jim, before moving to the NTRA, was tied into Fairgrounds, I also told him when I got in touch with him, I'd like to get his comments on the Lecomte from this weekend, see what he thought of Vickers in Trouble, Goldhawk running third, Albano second in there. So we'll get some 3-year-old talk with Jim as well. Should be a fun show. Speaking of the National Handicapping Championship, talked a little bit about it yesterday with our regular Tuesday guest, Gary Johnson of Beulah Park. Gary, who was a very successful trainer out in the Midwest going back to the 90s, and then went out of the training game and now bounces around to these handicapping contests. He got himself a couple of seats to the Vegas tournament. He was going to be heading to Vegas this morning. We said to him, good luck as a regular guest. We are certainly rooting for Gary Johnson, but I would be remiss, as I got the press release yesterday from the folks about the National Handicapping Championship that gave the list of folks that will be participating. And as I say, I would be remiss if I didn't also offer our congratulations and wishes of a good success to the folks who won here at Capital OTB. And I'm just kind of looking down the list to parse them out. And they are, we're sending two folks from Capital OTB and our handicapping tournaments. Two of our OTB participants are going out there. Joe Labonte from Waterford and Trotter Furlong from Saratoga Springs. So certainly the local rooting interest is for those guys. Certainly wish them well. And I also highlighted, I would love to see a map of the United States with like a push pin in all the cities that folks participating in the contest are coming from. And I would like to see the cluster here in upstate New York. I always say we have some very savvy players up here, and they do well in handicapping tournaments, not only in this area, but around the country. And I counted down from this greater Albany, Saratoga, going down to maybe the Catskill area, and I counted on the list of participants for the weekend championship out in Vegas, 12 from our area, including Del Mar, Glens Falls, there's a few from Schenectady, Waterford, Catskill, Slingerlands, Ballston Spa, Paul Matisse from Ballston Spa. The Matisse guys, well known certainly in the area as players and involved also in the training and owning side of the game. And Chuck Brower from Saratoga Springs, Mike Pichoia from Schenectady. If I pronounced the name incorrectly, I apologize, but good luck to you. And again, a number of people here from, as I say, our area, and I counted them up, 12 in there. So as I say, I'd love to see it parsed out and marked on a map of the United States and see if that 12 from this upstate New York area is significant, because my guess is it probably is. I would think this area, maybe if you got down to the Kentucky area, the Louisville area, maybe there would be some real players there, and Florida perhaps, because you get a retired population from New York down there. But it would be interesting to see it parsed out. But certainly at 12 from this general area up here, it's got to be a significant number of players. We said at the end of the handicappers report earlier, if you're a pick six person, certainly pay attention to Santa Anita tomorrow. They have a carryover going into tomorrow's card, $419,000. The Brad Free article in the Daily Racing Forum speculates, and I would not argue with this a bit, particularly with the little bit of a break in between leading into it. They're speculating perhaps $2 million tomorrow in the pool, the pick six pool at Santa Anita. It will be races 3 through 8. What do we have? 3 maiden races, a couple of claiming races, a turf race for Calbreds, and you can take a little look. It was Mike Hammersley put together a little pick six play in that is included in that Brad Free article, so you can maybe get some thoughts there as well. But again, you're a pick six player, even if you are a pick six player, maybe worth at least taking a shot, maybe putting a little bit of a ticket together with what is going to be a massive pool tomorrow at Santa Anita for the pick six. Sovereign Award finalists came out. Within the past 24 hours, the Sovereign Award is essentially the Canadian equivalent of the Eclipse Awards. And my only thoughts as I went down the list is there is little or no horses with real name value as far as race fans south of the Canadian border anyway. There are a couple that made a little impact with me. I'm looking, champion 2-year-old filly, Rhea Antonia, obviously there's one we know. I'm not sure on her Canadian record, I'm not sure, but I think they can fold in perhaps the North American record in total perhaps, but it'll be interesting to see. She is certainly the name horse in that category, and the one that probably sticks out the most to, again, United States racing fans. Forte de Marmi is a name I'm familiar with. I think you'd have to pay attention fairly closely to some of those Canadian stakes races, though. Forte de Marme is in the champion turf male category. You get down in the human categories, there are clearly some names that we're familiar with. Outstanding owner, John Oxley, Sam Sun. Outstanding trainer, Reed Baker, Mark Cassie, Nick Gonzalez, and Malcolm Pierce. Certainly familiar with those names, as well as the jockeys. So in the human categories, it's a little more. And typically, you get some crossover here in the equine categories of horses you're familiar with. And folks may wonder, why isn't Wise Dan in this mix someplace, having won the Woodbine Mile up there? I believe, I'm virtually certain that you have to have at least a couple of starts in Canada in the calendar year to be considered. And so that's why we don't see Wise Dan in the mix. It would certainly be a standout and very familiar. But again, a lot of these names in this particular 2013 version, not super familiar. But again, the 2013 Sovereign Award finalists are out. I have a link on Equidil if you want to go down the entire list. The New York Gaming Commission held a meeting yesterday looking for public comment on the medication rules that are being considered in New York, part of this uniform movement to uniform rules in the Mid-Atlantic and now stretching to other states. And it was kind of interesting because there was a little bit of pushback from the standardbred side of the game. The thoroughbred side seems to be locked into these uniform rules. But this is not something, this was, again, with the New York Gaming Commission looking at making these rules part of the New York regulations. They were looking for public comment yesterday, but this isn't limited to New York, with the harness side of the game pushing back a little bit. There's been pushback down in Kentucky, similar type of a situation, and nationally as well as the harness game. And I can kind of understand it. The harness game says, you know what? And there was a quote from one of the representatives of the harness game. Quote says, "I think the uniform rules are a good idea. I just don't think they should be uniform between thoroughbreds and standardbreds." And I have no argument with that. They are two different breeds of horses. They probably should be treated differently. And again, I don't think the harness people are saying they're against having uniform rules or rules that are maybe a little bit stricter than have been over the past few years. They're just saying maybe they shouldn't be exactly the same between the thoroughbreds and the standardbreds, because all you have to do is look at the race record of the big standardbreds in any given year as compared to thoroughbreds, and it's a different brand of game. They'll probably race about twice as much at least as the thoroughbred side of the game will. So it's a little bit different, and so again, I wouldn't really have any argument with the harness side of the game saying, listen, just parse it out a little bit differently. We're perfectly good having maybe a little bit stricter rules, having uniform rules, but they shouldn't necessarily be the same as on the thoroughbred side of the game. But again, interesting coming out of that Gaming Commission meeting in New York yesterday where they were looking for public comment. We're all for the uniform rules on the thoroughbred side of the game, but we're getting a little pushback here from the standardbred side. And hopefully that won't really delay things or stop this movement, but instead we'll have the authorities kind of take another look and say, okay, maybe we should parse things out a little bit differently for the standardbred side of the game. Also did want to mention, and let me see if I had, yeah, I do. This was from a few days ago, and I didn't want to let this get too far away. But if we go back to Saturday, King Leatherberry came up with a couple of winners on Saturday at Laurel Park, and the venerable King Leatherberry moves to 4th on the all-time list, passing Jack Van Berg. And King Leatherberry, after Saturday's card, 6,418 winners. And again, Jack Van Berg, 6,417 winners. He's number 5 on the list now. It's interesting. The top 10, out of the top 10, 7 of the top 10 all-time winningest trainers are still active. Dale Baird tops the list, 9,445 winners. Next, and pretty substantially next, Steve Asmussen, who is sitting on the all-time list, 6,650. And again, Dale Baird over 9,400. So there's a pretty big gap there. Jerry Hollendorfer in 3rd, King Leatherberry, then Jack Van Berg. You're on the rest of the top 10. Scott Lake, Richard Hazelton, D. Wayne Lucas, Bill Mott, and Frank Merrill. And of those, the only that are on the sidelines and not training, Dale Baird, Richard Hazelton, and Frank Merrill. So hats off to King Leatherberry, again, the venerable King Leatherberry, who's been in the news over the past couple of years, particularly with his very, very talented Ben's cat, who will be fun to continue watching again this year, particularly with King Leatherberry now making a little noise on the all-time win list. All right, we'll head to our first break. When we come back, it will be Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, and Countdown to the Crown. Again, a lot of great 3-year-old action over this past holiday weekend that we will take a much closer look at right after this.
I'm Brian Nadeau, inviting you to join me Friday, January 24th at the Clubhouse Racebook. I'll be handicapping the day's races live and managing a $500 bankroll for 25 lucky patrons. We'll see you then. Let's win together.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Good morning and welcome back to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning means a regular visit from Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, and Countdown to the Crown. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Seth. Great to be with you.
Happy to have you on board. And Jeremy, I'll ask you, I didn't get a chance last night. I'm hoping to catch it sometime in the next day or so. Did you get a chance to see the Horse Player series last night?
I did. I DVR'd it and watched it. My wife was watching a program, and so we watched it immediately thereafter. And I finished up about an hour after it completed. Pretty solid, you know. There were some definite factual inaccuracies, and us racing geeks will pick those out very quickly. I mean, they listed Groupie Dolls at 20-1 shot in the Cigar Mile when she was, you know, pretty much odds on, and so they took some literary license with the racing to make it, I think, a bit more entertaining, and we'll have to live with that, I believe. But overall, I think it was a decent first effort. I just hope that they keep things honest. You know, the one thing you want to do is give an honest portrayal of horse racing. And there's too much characterization of people and things like that, of what the stereotypes are of what a horse player looks like. And so I hope they keep things real over the course of the series.
My thought, and again, I didn't see the first one, so I'll get an opinion from you. My thought was things may pick up in the second and third episodes. I told people, don't necessarily judge it on the first, because I wondered if the first, there would just be a lot of introduction of the folks who were going to follow through the rest of the series.
Yeah, there was some of that. And I think, too, is the... You know, the eccentric types are probably focused a little bit more in the first show than what we'll see as you get further down the line. I mean, Michael Baychuk may be the most boring of the cast, you know, and we didn't get to see much of him in the first, but he's the best horse player perhaps in the entire cast, and the guy who probably represents, to me, what a national horse player looks like more, you know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, you know, kind of being reserved, and, you know, you can be outspoken and things like that, but to be completely eccentric, that's a handful of characters in the grandstand, and I just hope they don't make the entire series look like this is what it is at the racetrack, that everybody's this eccentric, quirky kind of character, because That's not necessarily true. Most of the people I find and what we've done through night school and touring and going around the country and stuff like that, most of your folks who like to play the horses, accountants, lawyers, money management, hedge fund kind of people who are in the numbers, and if you want to call it geeky or nerdy or anything like that, so be it. I think you would do more damage going to an accountant's convention than you would going to a concert and trying to find racing fans, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you have to have some attraction to the numbers and some attraction to that puzzle process.
All right, yeah. Now you got me ready to jump in and take a look at it as well, as I say. And I believe if folks didn't get a chance to see it, I'm not positive, but typically I went to the Esquire TV website, and typically they'll put their programming up on the website the day after. So I'm hoping that they've done that with horse players, and I can get to pick up on that maybe later today, but I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely worth a follow. I mean, you want to give it a shot and go through. I am the last person on earth to watch horse racing stuff on television. I mean, I like the reality, but, I'll be honest with you, I've never seen Seabiscuit. And I just don't get into these kind of things and watching the shows about horse racing. I didn't watch Jockeys, but I did give this one a shot because there's been a couple people, Michael Baychuk, Christian Helmers, who were guests of ours in night school. I've known Pete Rotundo for a long time, and his dad, Pete Rotundo Sr., used to be a handicapper for our website. So I had some interest in the individuals involved in the programming. So I gave it a shot, and I'm glad I did. I think it was worth the watch. I just hope that they keep it real.
You mentioned Seabiscuit, and I was flipping through the channel not more than 3 days or so ago, and I saw the original Seabiscuit on, I think it was Turner Classic, with Shirley Temple, and talk about taking a little bit of license. They certainly did there. But it was really interesting. It was a movie that was shot in color, but they had black and white footage of Seabiscuit's races. So they would head to the racetrack, and all of a sudden things would kind of fade from color to black and white, so they could seamlessly integrate the actual film footage of Seabiscuit. And that was kind of fun to watch, some of his actual races. But I would tell people, just if you're kind of interested, it's a quirky little piece of horse racing movie history.
Well, I'll tell you, that might be more realistic footage than we saw of the racing last night on Horse Players. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to give away too much, but apparently Trevor Denman didn't get involved in the telecast, so they dubbed over all of Trevor's race calls with somebody who has the worst impersonation of Trevor you've ever heard.
They did. This is the same company that did that reality series on Animal Planet a few years ago called Jockeys, and they did the same thing there. They showed races from Southern California and redubbed them with their own caller.
I mean, it might have something to do with, trying to pay a royalty or something like that.
Yeah, maybe.
And that would be a shame, I mean, we had that same thing when they did the PlayStation video game years ago when PlayStation was really hot. A lot of the jockeys and things like that didn't give their permission, and people didn't give their permission to use their horse names and stuff, and it took away some of the realism of the game. And so you kind of need all hands on deck, but at the same time, I can understand people wanting to get paid for their services too.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, Jeremy, let's move over and take a look at some of the action from this past weekend, because it was certainly a big weekend for the 3-year-old stakes down to Maiden Special Weight Company. You covered it nicely on Friday with your regular countdown to the Crown column, kind of anticipating a big weekend. Let's kick things off with probably the highlight of the 3-year-old stakes action down at the fairgrounds on Saturday, the Lecomte. This one coming in, I like Gold Hawk. I know in your top 10 list on Friday you had Gold Hawk at number 5. I'll be interested to see as we discuss this what you're going to do with Gold Hawk coming out. I think I'm going to give him kind of a pass here and look at Steve Asmussen as maybe coming out of it saying he was still satisfied with the horse. I'm going to hang my hat on that and just kind of think, boy, pace-wise, maybe it just didn't set up for him to make a big run down the stretch. But, boy, Ken Ramsey's Louisiana bred, Vickers in Trouble, certainly gets a breakout performance in here. We're going to watch the stretch run. Number 7, Vickers in Trouble, gets it done. Behind will be Albano and Gold Hawk duking it out for second place, with Albano getting the nod over Gold Hawk. And again, I'll give all 3 of these obviously Vickers in Trouble certainly comes out of it looking good. But the second and third place finishers, I want to see another from them before I make a decision one way or the other. The only other thing I want to mention before I hand it over to you, how'd they let Albano get away at 11-1?
Well, that's a good question. Usually Larry Jones has bet pretty solidly, down at fairgrounds and around the country. But I think a lot of folks like me with Albano thought that he was a sprinter and from a tough draw and and the way the race may shake out might not have been in a good spot to succeed. But he outran some of my expectations, and the bettors obviously at 11-1. That was definitely an overlay price. He probably looked more like 6-1, in terms of fair odds. And so that was an overlay, and folks who used him in the exotics, were rewarded well. Vickers in Trouble took all the late money in the race, and I thought he would get bet hard coming off that big figure, even being a Louisiana bred. This time of year in these kind of races, big dominant maiden breakers kind of take a lot of attention like that, especially when they get big figures. And Vickers in Trouble was a horse who, going into the race, I said, has a very good chance to win, but get rewarded because you're really taking a risk on a horse like this. You didn't get rewarded. I don't think it was fair odds, but obviously the way he won, somebody can come back and say he was worth every bit of the price. But for me, when I'm taking a horse coming out of a Louisiana-bred maiden race, stretching out around 2 turns against Open Company, I'll want to get more price. And if they beat me, I'll tip my cap and say, great job. And that's the case with Vickers in Trouble. Great job here. He looked a little bit like Oxbow last year in winning this race. A very similar finish, a similar type trip and performance, and this was a good race moving forward. Now, is Vickers in Trouble going to go on and win the Preakness like Oxbow did? I'm not saying that just yet, but at this stage in the game, this was a very good performance. Oxbow had a little more pedigree on his side and a little more 2-year-old Open Company excitement. Here, all we really know about Vickers in Trouble is what we saw on Saturday, and so it makes you thirsty to see more. You want to see him again. And like you said, the second and third place finishers make you want to see them again to see what they can do. And I want to see Vickers in Trouble do it again because the difference between the LeCompte and the Risen Star is going to be night and day in terms of the field. You had no Baffert, no Pletcher, no Doug O'Neill, that kind of shipping for the LeCompte. For the Risen Star, you can be sure that you're going to get Florida horses coming to try to avoid the Fountain of Youth and some of the big races going on down there. You're going to have horses from California that always come in for this time of year, and you're going to have some Oaklawn horses that start trying to separate themselves as well. So the field for the Risen Star will be much, much deeper, and Vickers in Trouble will get another chance to prove that against a better cast. But you cannot fault what he did on Saturday. It was outstanding.
And again, Gold Hawk number 5 on your list Friday going into the weekend. Where's he going to wind up this week?
Well, I've done some reshuffling here. There's been a couple horses, and we'll get to them later, that I think have moved up. I've dropped him down. He's in the mid-teens now. I think he's a horse you still want to stay with. I mean, horses lose races. It's not the end of the world. First time in stakes company, and the third race in 7 weeks for Gold Hawk. I know when he ran last time, you and I talked about it and said, well, what are they going to do with Gold Hawk? And neither one of us thought that they would wheel back into the comp so fast. And when they did, I remember you posing this to me last week of, boy, they came back a little quick. Maybe it was too quick because the horse was flat. Now, he would not have beaten Vickers in Trouble even with another week or two in between races. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insinuating that. But he would have went by Albano in the stretch, I think. I mean, he had that horse dead to right to go by him in the stretch and just flat out was flat and hung through the lane and wound up third. So, Gold Hawk should have run a little bit better. Maybe the races were a little too close together. And now you get a tricky deal with him because you're kind of committed to this program. What are you going to do? Skip the Risen Star and wait all the way to the Louisiana Derby at the end of March now? It's kind of a weird place for him to be. But he's by Empire Maker, he's out of caressing, and he has a lot of talent. Steve Asmussen's a good horseman. So this is the kind of horse I think you're going to look at is he's got to go to the Risen Star, he's got to go to the Louisiana Derby, and he's got to run better than he did Saturday. But he's capable on all those counts.
And before we move on to another race, I just want to get a comment from you on another piece of news over the past week. You mentioned it in your Countdown to the Crown column on Friday. What do you make of Shared Belief and the little ding he got? I said, boy, with the Derby being a set place on the calendar, it's tough to get a shred of hay in your path and feel really confident about going forward. This, however, is maybe early enough that they can juggle things up a little bit, but it's never good news when something like that happens.
No, it's not, and with some trainers, it may be even less of a deal, but with Jerry Hollendorfer, it's a big deal. I have never followed a trainer in my entire life more stuck on a regimented schedule. His horses drill every 6 or 7 days like clockwork. If they don't stay on the Dorf program, he usually gives them time off and they reset themselves. So, this is a guy who's very, very regimented. His horses come back after a race quicker than most people. Most people might give their horses 14, 17 days after a race till they're back on the tab. With Hollendorfer, it's 7 to 10 days, and they're back working, and then they're working every 6 or 7 days like clockwork, no matter the weather. And so to take one off of their program that I'm sure he's designed and lined up to get the horse ready for the preps that he's got penciled in, that is a big deal. And for Shared Belief, that's going to change things up a little bit. And hopefully it doesn't send him, off the reservation. But, look, little problems, big abscesses become quarter cracks. And now you're dealing with a quarter crack and not just an abscess. Or is that quarter crack going to be something that's going to eventually need patched in a bar shoe? And is he going to run on a bar shoe somewhere down the line to get a prep in just to get ready? Those are all things that are possibilities at this point. So if you like Shared Belief, there's no reason to just completely abandon him, but there's definitely cause for pause.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get back to, as I said, racing this past weekend went from stakes down to maiden specials. And, a horse breaking the maiden at this point maybe is a little bit up against it as far as Derby, but there's a whole Triple Crown trail to watch. So it is worth paying a little bit of attention to some of these horses as they break through. We'll go back to Saturday down at Gulfstream. Their fourth race was a maiden special event. And I'll tip my cap to you, Jeremy, reading your weekly countdown to the Crown column. And again, this came out on Friday, the day before the race. You typically preview the big stakes for 3-year-olds the weekend, also allowance events and maiden specials. And one of the maiden specials was this fourth race at Gulfstream, where you said Tonalist exits a highly key race at Aqueduct against respected Todd Pletcher stablemates Matterhorn and Harpoon. And as we watch the stretch run, it will be #1 Tonalist in the second career start for Christophe Clement, getting it done under Joe Bravo and doing it pretty nicely at a 7-2 price. What are your thoughts going forward for Tonalist?
Well, it was one of the better, maiden special weight wins we've seen because it was a route distance, because it was against very good competition, and the horse had a little back class to him. I mean, again, the horses he faced last year in that race at Aqueduct, you could put those kind of horses in stakes races and nobody would have really, balked at it. So that was one of those kind of stakes caliber maiden specials that shows up in late fall and at a couple of the circuits around the country, Aqueduct included, around the Thanksgiving holiday. And this horse is good. I mean, Tonalist really has put some, nice races together now, and he beat a good field in this race. And so I think he's one to keep an eye on moving forward. I think this is a horse who can do a little damage. What we've seen, Seth, in the Florida Derby over the last several years, and this is part of our Countdown magazine preview where we take a look at each race and what has been successful. Horses coming out of the maiden and allowance races have done extremely well at Gulfstream going into the Florida Derby. That's been the path of success. And so a horse like Tonalist can step up and make that rise. He would not be a surprise to be a serious contender for the Florida Derby.
All right, we'll keep our eyes on him. Now let's go out to the West Coast. We'll go to Northern California. On Saturday, it was the California Derby, $100,000 purse. We're going to watch the stretch run here. It's going to be #2, Exit Stage Left, over #1, Enterprising. Exit Stage Left had been a Northern California project for Jerry Hollendorfer. Enterprising came up from Southern California for Tommy Proctor. Enterprising was the 9-5 favorite. Again, he'll run second. 5-2 was the Hollendorfer Russell Bayes Exit Stage Left, who will win here. Now, do note, this is, of course, a synthetic surface, and Exit Stage Left has put in 2 prior efforts over this, so we don't know what Exit Stage Left will do on dirt. But Exit Stage Left, 3 for 3 so far. Your thoughts on these?
Well, he's the son of Noonmark, who was a really fast sprinter who didn't have a long and glorious career, but was pretty brilliant. And you thought Noonmark would produce fast sprint-type horses, but he's actually surprised and been a fairly decent route sire. And there's some stamina on the bottom of the pedigree here out of a Peaks and Valleys mare. So Exit Stage Left has some reason to like this horse, stepping up and taking on some of the tougher runners. The splits in this race were really sharp. I mean, 23.86, 24.34, 24.76, 24.83. And then 6:28, the final 16th. I mean, those are like rhythmic. That's what you want to see, and this is a horse who can sustain his speed over a distance of ground. Enterprising's a very, very nice horse. I thought Enterprising would blow his doors off turning for home based on the way that horse ran in the Eddie Logan turf at Santa Anita, and Enterprising could not get by Exit Stage Left. I mean, this was a hard-fought race, a serious win, and I think it means Exit Stage Left is going to be awfully tough in the El Camino Real Derby. I think the horse will, step up to that 1 1/8. He's probably going to face a tougher field, obviously, and Enterprising may get a return bid because he ran well enough in the synthetic. One thing about Enterprising, though, regular rider Gary Stevens was out of town to ride Mucho Macho Man. You put Gary Stevens on that horse over Aaron Greider, and that's kind of like trading out me taking out of the cast and putting in George Clooney. It's going to make the movie a little better. So, I think that I think Stevens may have made the difference in that race had he been there, and maybe he would make the difference at 1 1/8 when they get to the El Camino Real. But these are two nice horses. Exit Stage left 3 for 3 all stakes wins, and so you can't fault that.
And I'd go see any movie with you, Jeremy. I would find that entertaining in and of itself. Let's shift our attention now over to Oaklawn on Monday, the Smarty Jones, which kicks off their 3-year-old trail. And we're going to watch the number 8 Tanzanite Cat get it done over the number 6 Walt. The favorite in the race was the 6-5 Coastline for Mark Casse. That one will run third. Again, this is the short stretch with a mile race down there at Oaklawn. Tanzanite Cat, nicely done for the red-hot Cody Autry and Norberto Arroyo down there at Oaklawn Park. And I also found it interesting, the second-place horse, Walt, because that one comes out of the Springboard Mile, which was so productive last year with second-place finisher Will Take Charge, so gets kind of validated again this year with the fourth-place finisher running second on Monday. But Tanzanite Cat, lightly raced, only 3 starts prior to this, gets it done nicely in the Smarty Jones.
Yeah, he did. And Tanzanite Cat kind of struck a good chord for the Fairgrounds horses. The Fairgrounds runners ran first and third in this race. So early in the season, we see a little edge maybe to the Fairgrounds horses who've had a little more of the winter to race and are more race-ready now early in the Oaklawn season. We saw a similar situation last year where it looked like maybe that the Fairgrounds horses were stronger than the Oaklawn horses early in the meet, too. So a lot of that might have to do with the calendar, that Fairgrounds meet beginning in November, and those horses are a little more race-ready in January for these kind of races. So Tanzanite Cat, a good effort. Cody Autry's got himself a pair of decent horses. Paganal also in his stable for the same owners, and both are looking at the Southwest now. Walt, like you mentioned, did a nice bit of flattery for the form of the Springboard Mile, because the Springboard Mile at Remington, had 2 nice horses, Louis Flower, a Brett Calhoun trainee, and then the runner-up Noble Cornerstone, who looks like a good one for Wesley Ward, that New York bred. Those 2 horses coming out of the Springboard Mile have to like the way Walt ran in this race in the Smarty Jones to flatter their form a little bit. The horse I want your fans to put on their horses to watch list, Firestarter, who ran 4th in this race. Firestarter was a complete mess at the beginning of the race, around the first turn, didn't corner very good at all, and just absolutely blew by every horse in the gallop out like they were standing still. This is a horse who ran a much better race than it looks on paper. He's got a pretty good pedigree, and Steve Hobby can get a horse to run a long distance, as we've seen Tismiss Sue and some horses on the turf over the years. A guy I used to work with back at Remington in the day, Steve Hobby, a really good horseman, and I think he's got one in Firestarter you'll want to watch. I would not be against betting that horse back in the Rebel if that's where he shows up. Firestarter might be a good one to try Fairgrounds with that long stretch run as well.
All right, we'll put an asterisk next to his name. And finally, of the videos we're going to take a look at, we'll go to Monday at Santa Anita, the San Pedro. Short field of 4, and maybe it's a little bit of a similar situation with Midnight Hawk. That one faced a short field for Bob Baffert. Another Bob Baffert runner on Monday in the San Pedro gets it done. And similarly, comes out of the short field, but does it with a little bit of buzz. 3-5 favorite was Indianapolis, making the second career start for Bob Baffert after breaking the maiden in the career debut at Hollywood Park. So now 2 for 2. And again, comes out of this. It's a short field. I'm always a little leery about that, but comes out of it with a little buzz. Your thoughts on Indianapolis?
I'm kind of biting on this one, Seth. I got to tell you, I really like the win by Indianapolis. I wasn't sold on Midnight Hawk, even though he beat a good horse in Cristo in the Sham. They went 2 turns. Indianapolis didn't beat anybody of that kind of quality, and this was only a 6-furlong race. And yet I like this horse a lot more than I like Midnight Hawk. I like the pedigree more. I mean, this is a Medaglia d'Oro out of Pretty and Smart. I mean, this is a really nice pedigree that should be good going long and has been exceptional going short. So I can't wait to see Indianapolis try long. And Baffert was unabashed in his post-race comments. They weren't nickel-diming around on what they thought of the horse. He said this horse has superstar qualities, and they're now on the path of looking at the Derby and working backwards to figure out the prep path. I think in the back of his mind, he always thought this was a good one, and I tend to agree with him. I think Indianapolis is potentially a special horse here, and he's going to get every shot on the Baffert trail to ship around. This could be a horse who goes to Oaklawn for the Southwest and Arkansas Derby, kind of a Bodemeister kind of thing. Like we saw a couple years ago, Secret Circle. These Baffert horses have done so well. Looking at Lucky, hit the road to Oaklawn. I wouldn't be surprised if this one shows up at a middle distance next at Oaklawn in the Southwest.
And I'll also note, owned by Tabor and Magnier, certainly prominent owners. They paid a little less than $500,000 for this horse right up here at Saratoga in 2012. But I don't know that I've ever seen Tabor and Magnier with Baffert before.
No, that's kind of a strange combination. I don't know that he's had any for them as well. If anybody knows any, shoot me an email because, like you, I don't recall any off the top of my head. But
Pletcher, yes. Baffert, I'm not familiar with. Jeremy, we only got about 30 seconds left, but I wanted to touch on one more race. We watched it yesterday, and I wanted to get your thoughts. The Kitten's Joy on Sunday down at Gulfstream Park. Storming Inti just ekes out the win. Nice ding-dong battle. Storming Inti and We Miss Artie. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are going forward, because obviously this was a turf race, but We Miss Artie did so well at Keeneland on the synthetic last year as a 2-year-old, so the bluegrasses may be hanging out there. And Storming Inti, the winner of the race, prior to this race on Sunday, had won an off-the-turf race on the dirt at Gulfstream. Seems like more of a turfman horse, but has won on dirt. Your thought on these two 3-year-olds?
I like them. I like them both. I mean, this was a week that I really liked the horses. I've been kind of, hot and cold on some throughout the first couple weeks of the season, but I really liked the stakes horses this week. I thought the Kitten's Joy was the best stakes race we've seen so far this year. Storming Inti and We Miss Artie, two really good horses, throwing it down in the lane. That's what you want to see. Top connections, good pedigrees, and I think you're going to see these horses take that polytrack path to the Derby, and you have to consider those kind of horses. We're trying to figure out who the 20 are that are going to be in the field. It would be no shock to see both of these take that polytrack prep path and get there, and that's what it's all about. Who's going to get there at this point, and then we can figure it out once they're in the field.
And Jeremy, I just want to say I did a little research yesterday because obviously after the weekend they sent out an updated points list, and I was kind of curious. The last horse to make it in the field last year, 10 points. 10 points got him in. And I'm wondering if maybe this year it'll tighten up a little bit in the second year of this system. But it took only 10. And Fear the Kitten was on the AE list with 6 points. So some of these horses that have scored so far, they're light on points, but who knows? 10 may get you in. Although, as I say, I wonder if the second year things will get a little dicier, but we'll see.
I don't think so. I think that you're always going to see that. I think this points thing is much ado about nothing, and there's always 16 or 18 legitimate horses, and then the bottom 4 or 5, and we end up with 2 also eligibles is typically the way it goes. There's never 30 names in the hat where the points are relevant to separate a bunch of horses at the bottom. I think you'll see that same kind of thing. Injuries are a part of this. Horses that can't get a distance, they get points early in the year, but their connections get wise by the time May rolls around and decide not to take a shot at a 1.25 miles.
All right, Jeremy, we got to go. Got to let you go, but certainly I'll be tuning into the Countdown to the Crown column over the weekend or on Friday because I'd like to get some thoughts also if you toss them in there. Gala Award, a maiden winner for Pletcher. Mighty Brown with the disappointment at Ocala yesterday, which I kind of wondered why he went there. Maybe now we know, but I'll check in to see if you have any comments on those two on Friday as well. Jeremy, always appreciate the visit. We'll talk to you next week.
Stay warm, everybody.
All right, thanks a lot. Jeremy Plonk, HorsePlayerNow.com, also Countdown to the Crown. We'll take our next break. When we come back, Jim Mulvihill from the NTRA, who will do a little preview of the National Handicapping Championship in Vegas coming up on the weekend. Stay tuned.
I'm Brian Nadeau, inviting you to join me Friday, January 24th at the Clubhouse Racebook. I'll be handicapping the day's races live and managing a $500 bankroll for 25 lucky patrons. We'll see you then. Let's win together.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Very happy to be joined now by Jim Mulvihill from the NTRA. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
Happy to have you on, and we'll talk a little bit about, got the press package yesterday for the National Handicapping Championship, which I think is going to be very exciting. Oh, and I'll ask you, I said I just had Jeremy Plonk on. He had a chance to watch it. I haven't seen it yet. Did you watch the Horse Players Series last night?
I didn't know. I had another event to go to. It's on my DVR, so I'm watching it today.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I'm excited to take a look, and I certainly that's going to tie in nicely with the NHC down in Vegas. And again, we'll get to a little bit of that in a second. But as a member of the NTRA staff, you were down at the Eclipse Awards at Gulfstream over the weekend. I talked to you during the break, and you said you were watching the races on Saturday. I just want to get your thoughts. Mucho Macho Man in that Sunshine Millions Classic. We had Mike Welch and Jay Pribman on with us Sunday morning. They both referred to it as a paid workout, and pretty nicely paid with the pot there in that Classic. But what were your impressions of Mucho Macho Man?
That's pretty much the phrase I was going to use, was a public workout. It was exactly how it should have been. I mean, that's what a Breeders' Cup Classic winner should do against a field like that. There wasn't a lot in there that he was facing, but that doesn't make it any less impressive. I mean, he went around there as easy as could be, drew away, and I don't know what the final margin was, but I'm sure it was double digits, and it probably could have been a lot more than that. So it was ultra impressive, and when you consider that last year in that exact same spot, he injured himself, and it was not a great start to the year. So I think that just foreshadows hopefully another great year from him.
Yeah, and the secondary really nice thing about that is the Breeders' Cup champion comes back for the next year, which is good enough in itself, but starts the season in January, which is great. And looking back to the Eclipse Awards on Saturday night as well, there are a number of horses that were named champions that are coming back. That's going to make it a fun year. Certainly Wise Dan. We're going to get at least one more from Groupie Doll. And, of course, the champions on the 2-year-old side will come back as 3-year-olds. So it's shaping up to be a nice 2014.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all three of the finalists for Horse of the Year are likely to come back. How often do we get to see that? I mean, we spend so much time wringing our hands over the fact that our top horses don't come back. And now we've got a year where it's all lining up. So let's keep them all safe and healthy, and hopefully we'll get to see them throughout the entire year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's shift our attention to the National Handicapping Championship. We talked a little bit about it yesterday with one of our weekly guests. We have Gary Johnson from Beulah Park on regularly with us on Tuesdays. He's got a couple of seats at the table down there at the championships. He was looking forward to shipping out today and getting down there for the weekend action. There's a nice field. Tell us a little bit about the format coming up on the weekend.
Sure. Well, that's probably the biggest news going into this year's tournament, is that the format has changed. It's a 3-day tournament for the first time ever. And the first 2 days are going to play out very similar to what people have seen in the past, where you're making 15 wagers, 8 of them in mandatory races, 7 in optional races. The difference this year is that after those first 2 days of 15 races per day, the top 50 players are going to go on to a tournament where they will carry over their bankroll, and then those 50 are going to play, I believe, 10 races, and then that's going to determine a final table where the field's going to be cut down to 10 players, and once again, the bankroll is going to carry over but you're going to get down to this final table of 10 players, which I think is going to make it even more exciting. I mean, I've been to the NHC a few times. Those last couple hours are always really tension-filled, and the drama is very high. But I think now when you've got the 10 players all in one spot where it's almost poker style, you know, they're all going to be in the same area, looking each other in the eye, and we'll all know where they're at. So we'll be able to follow them. The horse players show will be able to follow them, and I think it's just going to be incredible drama for that last final table.
I agree completely, and I think you said it very well. I think this ups the drama quotient significantly, and it's going to make it a lot of fun to follow. And for folks who are following the leaderboard as the weekend goes along, give us maybe some idea of some of the players we may want to watch. And I note in here, just on the press notes, the fairer sex is certainly represented. You have 29 female entrants in there. You also have some couples in there, some family members that are playing together. Who are some of the names we may want to pay attention to that have some stories that are kind of interesting?
Well, it's always a tough field to handicap because you've got 495 entrants, and I think of it as it's like trying to pick the winner of a golf tournament going in. I mean, you've got your favorites who are hot, people that have been there before that would not surprise you to win. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that anybody in this field isn't accomplished enough to have their best few days and jump up and win. That said, if I had to put money on somebody, I'm looking at the people who have both the experience and are one of the dual qualifiers. We have 69 people who are dual qualifiers, meaning they've got 2 entries this weekend. That's a huge advantage for obvious reasons. They've got the ability to spread out their plays. If both of their entries are live coming into the final day, they've got a lot of options about being able to cover multiple plays in the mandatory races. So there's a lot of strategy involved for those people that have 2 entries, and I think those are the ones that you have to consider the favorites. Now you combine that list with some of the people who are most experienced in tournament play. There are 10 people in this tournament that have made NHC finals appearances 10 or more times. Some of them have been here 8, 9, 10 years in a row. So these people know what they're doing. They're not going to get caught up in the excitement. They play in tournaments all the time. And so I think you look for the overlap between that experience and the dual entries. So for my money, somebody like, say, Sally Goodall or Paul Sherman, these are 2 of the people that have been to the NHC finals 12 times out of a possible 14. You've got a past winner like Ron Rippey. He's dual qualified. He's a previous champion, and he's been here 10 times before. So I think those are people that you would say, if you had to choose early favorites, they would be maybe a little bit of a shorter price than, say, the rest of the field.
And if we're looking for a big payday to root for, the winner of the Tour this year, Brent Sumja, has a chance at a very nice payday on the weekend.
Oh, $2 million. So because Brent won the Tour, he's eligible for a $2 million bonus if he wins this weekend. And we should all be rooting for him.
Can you imagine him getting to that last table of 10 and what the drama is there with $2 million on the line?
We would probably have to call an EMT for an oxygen tank. But I mean, this guy is as cool as could be, and he has already talked about he's donated a portion of his Tour winnings to a horse retirement fund in the Pacific Northwest that's run by a woman that he's been friends with for a few years, who he actually met via social media. But he's a former trainer, a horse lover who feels very passionately that horse players shouldn't feel like it's not part of their responsibility to give back. You can debate the merits of that. I'm not sure that's the case. To me, it's the industry's responsibility. The players are guests, and I don't think it's their responsibility. But I love a horse player who is willing to contribute to that, and Brent is hoping to win the $2 million bonus so that he can take care of not only his friend's horse retirement fund, but he wants to give to all of the accredited horse retirement facilities that we have in the country.
Yeah, and again, that's great to hear, certainly, so that makes him even a little easier to root for. And I'll also note the press package that came out is kind of interesting, breaks down a lot of statistics of, sexes and, as I say, couples that are entering, et cetera, and then gives some little trivia notes as well. And I did note in here, Nicole Cox once flew first class from Italy to New York in a seat next to Mother Teresa. I love that one.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know any more of the story than that, because the players they fill out a little questionnaire, and then I go through all the questionnaires and pull out some of the more interesting facts. And she just dropped that one in there as casually as could be. I'm not sure how that came to pass, but that can only help her this weekend, you would think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you've made buddies with Mother Teresa, it's got to help you. So,
and I believe she mentioned that she did get a blessing too.
Oh, there you go. So she's got that going for her, as Bill Murray said. All right. Before we let you go, Jim, just wanted to touch on, again, I mentioned earlier on the show, you moved to the NTRA from spending a lot of time working down there at Fairgrounds prior, and so you're now in New Orleans, in fact, for a few days before you head out to Las Vegas, and so I'm sure you paid a little bit of attention to the nice steaks action they had this weekend, even though you were over on the Florida side. They kicked off their 3-year-old trail, and it's that time of year. I want to get your impressions. The Lecomte going in, I thought Goldhawk was very, very interesting. I'm still kind of looking for him going forward. I'm going to give him maybe a little bit of a pass. That was a quick turnaround for him. Same with Albano. But boy, how about the Louisiana bred Vickers in Trouble for Ken Ramsey?
I couldn't be more excited about a Louisiana bred being on the Derby Trail. I think the last time, I haven't looked this up, but just going from memory, I think the last Louisiana bred to make it to the Kentucky Derby would have been Zarb's Magic, and that was when I was in high school. So we're talking 20 years ago. It would be incredibly exciting for everyone around New Orleans just to have a Louisiana bred make it to the gate for the Derby. That said, do I think he's the most promising Derby prospect to come out of this race? No, I see it more like you do. I still think Goldhawk is the one that has the most upside. Not only because the breeding is just ridiculous. It makes you want to drool. But on top of the pedigree, just Steve Asmussen, I believe, is a master at letting horses come along slowly and peak on the big day. And when Steve has a horse with a pedigree like this, that he knows has some talent from the first 2 races and from watching him in the mornings, the Lecomte is not the goal. Obviously, the Louisiana Derby is the goal, and then the Kentucky Derby is the goal. So I think just like Steve's first Kentucky Derby horse was 50 Stars. I think that was 2001. That horse ran, I think he hit the board in the Lecomte, ran out of the money in the Risen Star, and then he comes back and wins the Louisiana Derby. And Steve has taken this trail many times before, swept it with Tyro. He knows how to prep a horse for the Louisiana Derby. And I think Goldhawk we're going to see come along slowly and hopefully peak at the end of March. Now, Vickers in Trouble was ultra impressive, and that's not to take anything away from him, but he's by Into Mischief, and I think everybody is going to look at this horse and say, what's going to happen when they start going 1 1/8 and 1 1/4? I would love to see a Louisiana Derby or a Louisiana bred horse get enough points for the first Saturday of May, but I just don't see it happening. I think Goldhawk is still the one to watch.
Yeah, I'm kind of tilting in the same direction, but we'll see. It is going to be, I think they got a salty bunch down there for their 3-year-old season this year, so it's going to be fun to keep focused on Fairgrounds. Jim, as always, we appreciate the visit. Have fun on your trip out to Vegas. It certainly looks like it's going to be a fun weekend with the National Handicapping Championship, so good luck to you, the folks at the NTRA and the Racing Forum sponsoring the event. Have some fun, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Thanks so much, Seth. Anytime.
Thanks a lot. Jim Mulvihill from the NTRA, again, National Handicapping Championship. We'll focus on that. There's some nice stories. Of course, our regular guest, Gary Johnson, participating. As I said, a couple of folks coming out of the Capital OTB handicapping tournaments. Joe Labonte of Waterford, Trotter Furlong from Saratoga Springs, so we're rooting for them as well. And as I said, a dozen people coming out of this greater Capital District area going up to Saratoga and down to Catskill as well. So we'll hope all of the New York participants do very nicely on the weekend with the National Handicapping Championship. That'll wrap things up for Racing Across America for this Wednesday morning. We're here every weekday from 10 until 11 a.m. A little bit earlier, we were doing the Handicappers Report, looking at Tampa and Turf Paradise. Hopefully we gave you some good info. So cash some tickets this afternoon. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.